All right. Welcome to the Choo Choo Time Machine as we go deeper and deeper into geological time and explore every possibility for sentient life to evolve. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the CMTK podcast once again. We are your hosts today, and if you're just joining this series, just let it be known that this is a speculative evolution exercise encompassing all the geological epochs of the past. That is to say, you know how you got those time periods, Cretaceous, Jurassic, Triassic, etc. We are going down every such period and looking at how a human-like intelligence, a civilization-building intelligence, may have evolved in each epoch. And this is, I think, part 5 now of a long-running series. We don't know how far we'll go, man. As long as the fuel lasts, pedal to the metal, we're going down in deep time. This is your host, CM Kosemen speaking, joined here by my good friend TK Sivgin. And how deep did we get? What era are we in, my friend?
Well, in the last episode, we were in the Triassic, and I think now we have passed the threshold of the greatest mass extinction in history.
Yes.
And are now in the Permian period, which is just such a fascinating time because it's the first time terrestrial ecosystems started started functioning as we are used to, with big herbivores and big carnivores on land.
Yeah. And a little primer on this era, I think even among people casually interested in dinosaurs, the Permian period and the end Permian extinction are not appreciated well enough. I mean, I'm just going to give you a little introduction, and if you're kind of into our deal, this might sound repetitive, but a lot of new people are joining this channel, and they're also donating to our Patreons. So just for them, maybe, look, the Permian era happened just before the dinosaurs started to evolve, and it ended with one of the greatest mass extinctions on record, actually the greatest mass extinction. Almost 70-80% of all life forms died. There were no big animals left on land. And what was this thing caused by? Do we have a clear idea?
General thinking is that in Russia and China, you can find these very big basalt flows called traps.
Yep.
And it is thought that these were created by lava flows that lasted for maybe hundreds of thousands of years. So imagine a gigantic volcano like nothing ever recorded in human history, just spewing out lava and greenhouse gases and toxic fumes for thousands and thousands of years. And that will have a toll on the planet.
It was a bit like Mordor, or like I'm thinking about like entire regions like the size of Ukraine just turned into churning fields of lava.
Yeah, not just Ukraine. Like I think the trap field in Siberia is about the size of the USA.
Whoa. I mean, imagine looking at the world from space in that time. Like you would see lights in the night part of the globe, but where they might even look like cities, but look closer, it's almost something like Mordor.
Yeah.
And you can hear the Lord of the Rings Mordor theme music, like it was a really, really awful time.
Yeah, but so maybe there were like some Permian orc and like a Permian orc civilization there.
Well, yes, as we will study now, there's a strong contender animal for those Permian orcs. And well, I mean, that's the introduction for the Permian period. And like one more time, just to repeat something that some of you may know, but a newcomer may not. Before this great Mordor extinction, there was actually quite a healthy ecosystem. And as TK just said, you had very successful land ecosystems with like plants, herbivores, carnivores, even some like very large predators. The seas were teeming with life. There were all sorts of trilobites and I think strange fish and amphibian adjacent creatures. So it was a lush and fertile planet. And what happened with those traps and lava fields was basically a great reset. And I'm not very well well versed on this, but I think according to something I remember, nothing bigger than a mouse survived on land or something. Of course, there were not even mice as we know them, but you get the idea.
No, not like that, actually. I think that's something you remember from the KPG extinction event.
So how was the nature of the extinction? Like what got to survive and...
Yeah. I mean, the hardest hit, and people often tend to overlook that because, well, we focus on land life. The hardest hit were the oceans. 90% of all marine species died out. And the explanation is fairly simple. Imagine all of these volcanoes spewing CO2 into the atmosphere.
Yep.
When CO2 comes in contact with water, it becomes carbonic acid. And if this comes into contact with aragonite or calcium or carbonate, with all of these minerals that marine animals build their shells from, well, they cannot build their shells anymore because they are literally dissolving alive.
I mean,
and one of the most fucked up things I learned is in the Paleozoic, there were two big families of corals. I think tabulate corals and rugose corals. I think those were their names. And would you believe me if I told you that these both completely went extinct, and the corals we have today had to evolve anew from sea anemones in the Triassic?
Wow. So
like there was a time period where corals literally went completely extinct without leaving descendants, and they had to evolve anew.
That's dark. I know. Maybe that explains the rudists in early Mesozoic waters. They were like, imagine a clam, but instead of two equal flat shells, one of the shells is big and deep, like an amphora, and they grow instead of on top of each other. So they were actually reef-building clams, and probably they evolved in the absence of these corals you just mentioned.
Yes, that could be. Although I think rudists are more common in the Cretaceous, but it is true that like the big coral reefs, like the Great Barrier Reef that you see in Australia, those are fairly recent developments. And before that, you had many other invertebrates that were actually the main reef builders.
Oh, well.
Like in the Devonian, you had these big mysterious sponges called stromatoporids. And in the Cambrian, it was archaeocyathid. And throughout like the Carboniferous and Permian, the main reef builders were actually brachiopods.
It's interesting how organisms have a proclivity to form reefs, and it kind of gives me a white pill hope for the future. I mean, if we wipe out the corals again, there might be a third coral resurgence from anemones or maybe barnacles or something this time. Who knows?
Barnacle reefs, that sounds cool.
Or like some marine isopod that becomes a barnacle again, and the barnacle becomes a reef again, and so on and so forth.
And then they go into the Zen dimension and become the enemies from Half-Life.
Yeah. By the way, if you're interested in Half-Life, go watch the Natural History of Half-Life series also. Like, just subscribe to this channel, click the bell, and then you'll remember. You can go to my previous videos and you can just watch the Natural History of Half-Life. Also, please subscribe to TK Sivgin's channel, and also like donate to his Patreon too, because I mean my channel is doing okay, but you know TK is the brains of this operation, and I'd be really happy if you could support his work too. Look, the great thing about my channel and TK Sivgin's channel is that our videos never get old. We don't make topical videos. We don't cover recent events, or we don't ride on the coattails of politicians. So like something we put out 3 years ago, you can listen tomorrow and it will be just as fascinating. So that's a caveat, but back to the reefs and stuff. Yeah.
So those things, like again, corals went completely extinct. Brachiopods also took a very big hit. If you don't know brachiopods, they look like clams, but they are actually not clams. They are, I think, more closely related to bryozoans, moss animals.
They are more elegant clams from a more civilized era.
Yeah, literally, because they actually respect body symmetry.
Oh, okay.
Unlike actual clams. So those, like, I mean, they didn't go completely extinct, but they took a big hit, and today they only survive in like the deep sea regions where there is no light anymore.
They were only rediscovered like pretty recently, right?
No, I'm not sure. No, I think brachiopods have been known to humanity for a very long time.
Okay, my bad.
There's some regions in China where they eat them.
Oh, okay. All right. So, looking at the Permian fauna, on land, what would be our top contenders for potential human level civilization builders, or maybe even potential culprits for this great extinction? Because I got a few theories, but I want to hear it from you first.
I mean, the most obvious candidate that you have mentioned a lot is this little synapsid called Suminia, which was a member of the Dromaeosauria, not to be confused with the Dromaeosauria, which are those raptor dinosaurs.
Yeah, equally potential holding for civilization, and yeah.
So basically, dromaeosaurs, they were anomodonts, so they were broadly speaking in the same group as the dicynodonts, like Lystrosaurus.
By the way, sorry for the parenthesis. Ecosystems in this time and age were dominated by strange groups of mammal-like reptiles. So if it hadn't been for this mass extinction, maybe something like mammals would evolve sooner. But yeah, it happened, and it gave archosaurs an edge for survival, and we had the hundreds of millions of years long reign of the dinosaurs. But yeah.
So yeah, Suminia, this animal, it was one of the first tetrapods that could be called arboreal. So it was living in trees.
Okay.
And its anatomy is very interesting because it kind of looks like a reptilian squirrel. But I think it also had like forward-facing eyes and other traits you generally associate with primate. So imagine
I just Googled Suminia, and you have Google autocomplete. So like when you write things like "why are girls," and then it's like "so cruel" or something. Then when I type Suminia, the first autocomplete that comes up is Suminia humanoid. So people are onto this thing.
Yeah, definitely. I think you are one of the reasons why they're onto this thing, because you talked about this in a very old video.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But
I don't think they have forward-facing eyes, but they have very big eyes. That's the thing. And yeah, generally imagine an animal that's like a cross between an iguana, a squirrel, and a lemur.
Yeah, so I'm looking at some images now. Imagine a lizard, but its limbs kind of resemble an opossum. So it's like they're like longish legs, and they have like longer forelegs and shoulder. They have more strong shoulder joints. They have something like hands. They're not really opposable, but they seem to be going there. They have short thumbs and 5 very long digits on each leg and each arm. There is a tail. It is kind of slim, so not as long as an iguana, which is what makes it kind of so strange and primate-like in my opinion. So the tail is only as long as the snout to vent length. And if you look at lizards, the tails are usually twice as long as the entire head and the body combined. But this thing has that half that length, and it's kind of like almost like an opossum tail. Exactly like an opossum. The skull is short and boxy. As you said, it doesn't have forward-facing eyes, but I'm looking at a diagrammatic drawing of the skull, and actually the eyes are able to face forward, and it's got like chisel-like front teeth, which almost certainly were covered by like some sort of lips or like gum tissue in life. So a lot of reconstructions of Suminia have the teeth exposed, like the Joker or some SCP kind of stuff. But obviously,
like rodents almost.
Yeah, but obviously in real life these things were covered, and I think there were lots of different species of these things too.
Yes, there were. But on the topic of lips, like for context, I have on my lap the book Synapsida, a new look into the origin of mammals by John C. McLaughlin. It's a book I think from 1982 by a very famous and infamous paleo artist.
Yeah, one of the idols of this channel, by the way.
Yeah, 1980 is the copyright. And yeah, guess how he drew this animal?
With complete, like, I think, SCP Joker teeth, right?
No.
Okay, I'm looking at a picture, and it looks like a cute... it almost looks like something from... what was that famous... The Land Before Time. Like a Land Before Time creature. It's got very big, loving eyes and a smiling face, and it seems to be sheltering eggs. So actually a very good reconstruction.
And yeah, an interesting thing is that McLaughlin speculates that this animal used its long tail to keep itself warm. Again, a bit like a squirrel.
This is such a McLaughlin-ism. I mean, he's very famous for like taking a strange feature and then coming up with an even stranger explanation than what has already been going around.
But many animals do that. But it makes the most sense if you imagine this animal actually having hair.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. So the reconstruction shows it like a reptile. So he could imagine. Listen to this in Palpatine's voice. He could imagine them keeping warm, but not having hair. And like he could imagine the thing keeping warm by wrapping its tail around it, which is cool. But he couldn't cross that extra mile, and he could not make it hairy like some sort of proto-mammal or even some sort of echidna. On the topic of body covering, by the way, you look at echidnas and monotremes or even pangolins, and I think those must be our go-to things when reconstructing these strange animals, because hair already was developing, obviously, but I think I don't know, I'm saying this without any scientific research whatsoever, but with proto-mammals like this, we might have a lot of examples where the hair is like that of an echidna, which is like really like sparse and like weird, sweaty, or something like a pangolin, which is just like keratinized scales. So lots of options on the table. So yeah, this would be my headcanon reconstruction.
Yeah. I mean, it is still a big mystery when exactly hair appeared in the synapsid family.
I'm not in a position to say anything about this because I don't know either.
There are coprolites, I think, from Russia again. I think the coprolites were produced by like early archosaur reptiles, but they contain bones from Dicynodons and Pseudodontodon. And in those coprolites, they have found traces of what they suspect is hair.
All right. I mean, sounds plausible. Yeah.
So it's possible that either Dicynodons or Cynodons had hair, but that did not prevent them being eaten.
Yeah, I think any small-bodied and reasonably active animal eventually develops hair. Even if you look at lizards, like a lot of features you think only mammals have. There are, for example, lizards with scales that almost look like ear flaps, or there are lizards which have like triangular shaped thin scales, and in a world without alternatives, you could easily see those things evolving into hair-like structures with easily, let us just say. So yeah, that's just my...
Isn't there like also this snake with
very
pointy scales? I don't know what it's called, like
Atheris. Atheris. They're like, it's some sort of viper. They're called eyelash vipers, and it's just incredible. It looks like Quetzalcoatlus, the Mayan feathered serpent god figure. Yeah,
I'm looking at the photo of it right now. It looks like it was made up by some fantasy author.
Yeah. So I think reptiles are scaly that way because they're very specialized for that sort of existence, and the more active niches are also already taken up by mammals and small mammals and rats and stuff. So, and birds. So I think it's very likely for any small-bodied vertebrate to evolve hair-like structures after a point. You even have like hairs evolving in insects or arachnids sometimes. So yeah, I don't see the point about hair being just like a hallmark of birds and mammals.
Yeah, well said. Yeah. So back on topic. So do you think, Suminia, I mean, the thing is, this animal did not actually survive into the latest Permian. So it wasn't even around when those volcanoes were erupting.
What was it replaced by?
Nothing.
Maybe drepanosaurs or ancestral?
I guess so, but drepanosaurs appear like 30 million years later.
Yeah, and in the Triassic. True.
Yeah, I mean, there was, I think, during the Permian Triassic mass extinction event, there is even something called a coal gap in the geological record. And it's thought that this means that the extinction was so bad that forests kind of stopped existing for a while.
I mean, let us put a positive spin on this, and let's just say it shows how resilient life is on Earth. But yeah, it's awful. And what kind of trees were these things living on? Do we know?
I think this was the time when seed plants first became like actually dominant. And you had a bunch of, there was this one plant group that is basically extinct today called the seed fern. And yeah, ferns today, they looked like ferns, but they were not actually closely related to the ferns we have today. Like ferns are much more primitive plants that still reproduce with spores like moss or fungi do.
Yeah, their reproduction is insane actually.
Yeah, and during the Paleozoic, you had all of these plants called seed ferns that they still looked a bit like ferns, but they already reproduce with seeds. And it's thought that this is a paraphyletic group, out of which arose the gymnosperms that we know today. So like conifer trees, ginkgos, and weird plants called gnetophiles. And also later on, like independently out of the seed ferns, also arose the flowering plants, it is thought.
Yeah. So these were tree-sized tree ferns, and on top of them, these things were living. I mean, look, the desire to see these things evolving into lemur-like things and then into monkeys is just so great that, it's one of my top candidates.
Yeah, but it is very anthropocentric, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's
And who is to say that even if these animals became intelligent, why would they eventually have to be humanoid? Like, what if this actually evolved into like a dinosaur shape?
Yeah.
Or a kangaroo one, or I don't know.
Okay, I can see this thing happening. Imagine a lineage of these gets really nimble with their hands arboreally, and then there's a drying event, and somehow a lineage abandons trees and starts living in the ground. There they take the social structures which they evolved in the trees, and they kind of refine them with these like burrow hierarchies, And then another lineage splits from that and gets actually bigger. So now they have like thumbs, they can dig, they have social structures. But instead of becoming human-like, these things become like, imagine a quasi-reptilian cross between like a gorilla gait and a baboon, but also with a tail. So also somewhat like a thylacine too. So, if you watch the last thylacine videos, those things can also run like wolves, but also like can do the strange kangaroo-like rearing thing. So like that kind of a stance, and maybe those would be the species that would evolve. And you could see something like this really like running up to you on four legs, then like kind of rearing up on its tail, and then with its hands it sells you corn or I don't know whatever things it is selling, ice cream or whatever, and then when you pay it puts the money in its purse by the side and then goes back like waddling again.
There is a character like that in this game called Star Fox Adventures. There is like a shop, and the shopkeeper is this snake with arms, basically. And
wait, what is it called? I need to look this up.
Star Fox Adventures, like Star Fox on the Super Nintendo.
I am unfortunately ignorant, but yes, Star Fox Adventures. Yeah, I'm looking that up.
Yeah,
nice.
Maybe look up Star Fox Adventures Shopkeeper.
Okay, Shopkeeper, just coming right up. This is a very Sonic coded game. Like, okay, yeah, it's like it looks like one of those intelligent tyrannosaurs that we considered in one of our previous episodes when looking at the Quintaglio Ascension series. But but the rest of the body is like a snake. So I'm looking at a kind of like Spyro the Dragon / Sonic the Hedgehog coded character, but it's got a burly like tyrannosaur-like face, big almost gorilla-like arms, and a snake-like body. Yeah, I'd like to go to that shop. Yeah, I never knew about this game, by the way. So thanks for enlightening.
I mean, Star Fox, it's like one of those. It used to be one of the big Nintendo series on the Super Nintendo and the N64. There were these space combat games, where you're in a spaceship and just shooting at targets.
Okay.
And then on the GameCube, for some reason, they made like a Legend of Zelda-esque adventure game about it, where this fox explores a dinosaur planet.
Oh, well, must be interesting.
It is very random, but it is fun.
It must be one of those, like, it's that like particular era in game development history when I think like big companies took on pre-existing games but wanted to make them more, as you said, like Final Fantasy like, or like I was really surprised to learn there's a Sonic game like that, and everything I knew about Sonic from the Sega Genesis was just running really fast and jumping on enemies. But turns out there's probably many Sonic games where you actually like walk around the place and talk to people and solve puzzles. And that's interesting.
Those are like, there is this one game from 2006 just called Sonic the Hedgehog, but people just call it Sonic 06. And it is literally considered one of the worst video games ever created. Because
I need
it is literally unfinished. Like they rushed it to meet like some Sonic anniversary, and the game is literally unfinished. Like you cannot play this game for 10 minutes without some major glitch or bug happening that just careens the physics out the window.
It looks so generic. I mean, the background assets, they look like they've imported. They could be any game, Turok the Dinosaur Hunter, and there's this like very characteristic mid-2000s render fog in a lot of the scenes. So everything looks bleak and rainy, like, I don't know, England or something. Yeah, well, I think the one of the best games to nail that was Crash Bandicoot, actually. So it was like a run and jump adventure, which was like quasi two-dimensional. And despite that, despite that, it was still like eminently playable, and I don't know, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, Crash Bandicoot, when you really look at it, it is basically Donkey Kong Country, but in 3D.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's literally what the developers tried to do when they made that game.
I mean, could be. But yeah,
I'm serious. They said this. Like, Donkey Kong Country was like one of their main inspiration when making Crash Bandicoot. From like the level themes and the construction and how the game is designed. Like, it's not this quasi-open world like in Mario 64 where you can run into all directions. But it's like very streamlined, but still very fun. Like an obstacle course. And it is very similar to the Donkey Kong Country levels in that sense.
Even when playing on the early PlayStation, I kind of felt like it was an answer to Donkey Kong. I mean, just the sensibility of the jungle, or even the design of the music, it really felt like they were it was like a Cold War kind of thing, where like instead of rival countries building bombers to compete with each other, it was rival companies building the next jungle animal platformer. So yeah.
This whole 90s era where people tried to be the new Sonic.
Yep. Elusive.
And then Sega themselves went under.
Yeah. I think they still exist as a company, no?
Yes, but they don't make consoles anymore. So they are basically reduced to making games for their former enemies.
Oh.
Like, imagine a kid from the 90s growing up into the 2000s and seeing like Sonic games on a Nintendo console.
Heresy.
That must have fucked with people's brains.
I mean, as the saying goes, if you can't beat them, join them. But yeah, in the 1990s, the competition between Nintendo and Sega was fierce. And it was, I mean, there were even like really slanderous advertising campaigns. I remember one of the advertising campaigns for Sonic 2, the very early Sega Genesis game. It literally said, the turtle is dead, long live the hedgehog. That is to say, the turtle was Nintendo with their slower device, but it also made a jab at like Super Mario World's universe of like turtles as enemies and like Bowser and stuff like that.
Didn't they also have this motto, Sega does what Nintendo don't?
Yeah, that was a thing. And then Nintendo had these weird adverts where you would see a crowd of millions chanting like it's a war rally from Yemen or like a political protest somewhere. But you zoom out and everybody's chanting like Mario. But it looked really politically charged, as if there's like shouting Marakbar American or something like that. But you zoom out and the crowd is actually the size of the world. And
they're forming a Mario shape. I think I've seen it, yeah.
Yeah, it was bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, in the 80s, Mario actually was more famous, like more well-known than Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, there was a brief period. Yeah. This is the only channel where you can hear about transitions from Permian primatoid parallel evolution to video game advertising history. And what
we should have called the podcast? Tangent Realms, like one of your books.
Oh, well, I mean, we should have called it, I don't know, Crash Bandicoot 5 Permian Boogaloo, or maybe I'll call I'll call this
or maybe
episode
just,
that.
I mean, we had all yesterdays, we had all tomorrows. Let's call it all podcasts.
No, I kind of don't want things to riff on my earlier stuff. I feel self-conscious about it.
Yeah, I'm just making jokes then.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
We don't have to rename the podcast unless there is like a demand for it. But I know CMTK is all right, I think.
Yeah. Well. There's another kind of Permian animal which I am keen on being potentially sophontable, and those are a related form. Actually, a lot of animals in this age. I mean, even if you look at the predators, there's something very mammalian and cunning about them, despite not much evidence there being to support them being really smart. But even if you look at the famous Dimetrodon or things like Ophiacodon, which was basically like Dimetrodon but with no sail, those things look smart in a way. But actually, like if I was to tap one more species as potentially intelligent, it would be one of those Lystrosaurs, which were really strange. For two reasons. One, they were all over the place at one point. Towards the end of the Permian, they were all over the place. And there are entire fossil beds where you only have fossils of these animals and nothing else, which kind of suspiciously looks like remnants of humans in a city, if you think about it.
Yes, or maybe like how our future deposits will look like with all the cattle and chickens we have.
Yeah, like the deposits of a pig farm. Exactly. And that would be scary because, who's farming these things? And yeah, there is that. So actually, it was like one of my long-running hypotheses. Actually, also the subject of another video on this channel. I think like 6 years old now. Go check it out. But the Permian extinction is marked by a rise in CO2, suspiciously similar to what we are doing to the planet now. I mean, we are recording in the 21st of July, 2024, and in this day and age, this is one of the hottest summers I've ever remembered. My brain has been turned into mush. So, imagine that going on for thousands of years. And what is the carbon release caused by? The conventional explanation is the lava traps. But what if there was something just burning fuel to keep their civilization going? Or maybe even just farts from these farm animals. There's this one statistic saying that cattle contribute so much of the methane that goes into global warming and stuff. I'm not really certain how accurate that assessment is.
1/3 or something, like a very big number. But like I sometimes heard that this is like also exaggerated by like vegans and
I've heard that too.
I could look it up if you want, like how much methane is produced by cattle.
Yeah. I mean, while you look it up, I'll just give my 5 cents about this whole thing. I also feel that the methane statistic is kind of exaggerated by industrial lobbying groups to kick the ball to the other side, so to speak. So it's the farm animals that are doing this and not the 1 billion cars on traffic right now.
But that's probably not true. Like cars do have a bigger impact.
Yeah. Or just even mining itself, So there, I mean, my hypothesis eventually was like these animals, these Lystrosaurs, they also look suspiciously intelligent. Some almost look like the large ground-dwelling Suminia descendant I outlined earlier. They had like really flat faces and forward-facing eyes. In fact, I think one of the first things that started our online friendship was me talking about these things and you sending me really incredible images.
Yes, I was. So like while you were making that video, I was attending a course for natural history illustrations at my university.
Mm-hmm.
And the subject I wanted to draw was like this replica of a Lystrosaurus skeleton we had in the archives.
Yep.
I was just sketching the head and it wasn't very good, my drawings, but it was a beginning. And because I wanted to keep drawing at home, I took like so many photos of this skeleton from so many angles and I sent them. Yeah, and I think in the comment section of your video, I asked you if you would like to have those photos as a reference.
Yeah.
And that's basically how we became friends.
Yeah, so yeah, maybe the real Permian extinction was the friends we made along the way. Exactly. Literally, in this case. Yeah.
Yeah, it takes the death of 90% of all life life on Earth to forge a friendship.
Yeah, and ultimately to make this podcast possible. Yeah.
It is a balanced sacrifice.
Yeah. Well, we had nothing to do with it. At least that's.
I would like to talk with my lawyer before answering that.
Okay. All right. So those are my ideas. What about you? Any other potential forms which I may have overlooked? Or
I mean, there were a bunch of other interesting animals during this time. Of course, the question is whether they had the potential for intelligence. I mean, there were many of these arioscelids, which were these very earliest diapsid reptiles that were all basically also tree dwellers. And yeah, maybe they could have gone along that arboreal lifestyle that we see in Sumenia. There were also these, what are they called? Coelurosaurus.
Oh, come again?
And these gliding, like these earliest gliding.
Yes, Solurosaurus. I may be misspelling. Yeah. They were weird. They were gliding lizard-like things, but they were really specializing for the gliding existence.
They were like, the thing is that they are unique. There are many animals throughout Earth's history that, like many like reptiles throughout Earth's history that evolved that gliding ability, and almost all of them did it by just expanding their rib cages into these sails.
Yep.
Like Dracovolans, which is a little lizard that I think lives in Myanmar today, that does this. But these things, I will really want to. Okay, their official name is Avicephalia. We will get to why they're called that. So these Avicephalians of the Permian, they are unique because they did not evolve wings by expanding the rib cage, but instead they evolved a whole set of extra bone rods that grew from like their armpits.
Yeah, and I remember something being said about these things potentially being able to be flapped like wings, or at least moved.
I mean, I could very well imagine it, but it is, but I don't know if there is like work on that. But yeah, it is pretty amazing. So basically, they evolved a whole set of it's like they evolved a third set of limbs just to evolve wings. So in a sense, these things are the closest you can get to this typical image of dragons with 4 legs and 2 wings.
Oh, yeah. I'm looking at avicephalans, and this is one of the favorite animals for spec evo people who want to create dragons, by the way, because they were almost going to evolve something like a set of wings without sacrificing their arms or legs
or ribs.
Yeah. So when spec evo people want to make believable dragons, they all go to these avicephalans, and
not just because of the wings, but also look at their heads. They have these pointy, like again, bird-shaped heads. That's why they're called avicephala, but with basically a crown of little horns.
Yeah, it almost looks like a ceratopsian skull.
Exactly.
So really bizarre creature.
Yeah.
And the gliding ribs are strange too, because they have been axialized. So they're not just like a semicircle of ribs with skin between them, but like there's almost like a swept wing kind of configuration, and the ribs on the leading edge of the wing are longer and stronger. So yeah, this thing was really doing something. And let us put our speculation hats on for a minute, and like I can really see like a kind of benevolent Arthur Clarke type civilization of flying reptiles evolving from these.
Yeah. I mean, again, like I picked them out because, I mean, it's superficial, but I mean, their heads, they give me a very bird-like vibe. And I mean, maybe they could evolve bird-like intelligence.
I think if you start flying about long enough, this eventually, like, your brain just gets wired this way. I mean, you get more keen to, you get faster reflexes, you get color recognition, more spatial awareness and stuff like that. So according to some reconstructions, these animals also have a really pronounced pineal eye, like that is to say, a third eye-like opening on top of their skull, which is home to like light-sensitive cells, which probably help regulate their hormones or something. Like, so yeah, like these could be really like, imagine no Permian extinction and somehow these things get a kind of main character plot armor, and they're allowed to develop, and at the end of the day you get these So they're not too big, child-sized or condor-sized, but yeah, flying reptiles. And there's just something very wise and benevolent about the way they look. So yeah, I could totally see.
So dragon civilization, everybody.
Yeah, but dragons, but more like Watto from Star Wars. So they're not like screaming and just flying in a horizontal format, but eventually, like when they evolve through flight, I think the configuration of their bodies would change. The body would get shorter. The flapping spikes would get bunched and get anchored to something like a fake sternum. So I'm imagining something like Watto, but with exactly this skull. So yeah. And whether mind tricks work on them or not is still up for debate.
Credits don't work on me, only money. No, wait, mind tricks don't work on me. That's what it says. Basically, that is the Permian. I mean, there were a bunch of other interesting animals. I mean, they don't really figure out in discussions of intelligence, but I just want to mention them. Like in the early Permian, one of the animal groups that was still dominant were not these synapsids or even the reptiles. It was reptiliomorphs like Diadectus or Securia, which are such a fascinating group of animals. If you don't know these reptiliomorphs, they were the ancestors of amniotes. So amniotes are the group that includes the synapsids and reptiles. And so these amniotes, they looked a lot like they are already reptiles or even synapsids. Like there is this one animal called Limnoscalis that already has like the differentiated teeth, almost like a Gorgonopsian. But it is thought that these animals still reproduced like amphibians. They had water-based larvae, and they had to go through metamorphosis.
Imagine a tadpole from one of these guys.
Yeah, like one of the largest, like Diadectus, could grow, I think, 3 meters long.
Yeah,
that tadpole would have been like the size of a carp. Assuming they had tadpoles and didn't like give live births like some amphibians do.
I mean, I've heard the tadpole discussion about things like Crassigyrinus, which is this like really strange, big, actually, it was like 2 meters long. Imagine like a 2-meter long tadpole with a huge mouth full of teeth, and it kind of looks like a giant salamander with tiny limbs. So I've heard a discussion about these things being tadpoles of something else, but they actually lived far earlier. They lived in the early Carboniferous, and so yeah, but I mean, large animals like that probably, I mean, let's be frank, probably reproduced by some sort of terrestrial caveat. Maybe they reproduced like those frogs which lay eggs and then the larvae develop inside the eggs and stuff like that. But who knows?
If you want...
Also, apparently some of the dumbest animals of all time lived in this era, the scutosaurs.
I mean, I don't know. What do you mean by dumb? Like, did they have an exceptionally small brain size?
Yeah, I've heard that about like scutosaurs or paraeosaurs, and those like they were also like, I mean, we are looking at candidates for sapiency, but I mean, let's touch upon them too. I mean, because they're just bizarre and
they are really fascinating animals because in some ways they were actually far ahead of the competition. Because like one of the like Bunostegos, which
I'm okay.
Bunostegos, which was a paraeosaur, I think of Niger.
Yeah.
And it is thought that this was the earliest animal that had the legs directly underneath the body, like in dinosaurs or mammals.
Yeah, it looks like a sheep almost, like very, very strange. Imagine you're trying to create a sheep or a goat out of lizard parts, and these things were originally assumed to be quote unquote anapsids, which were supposed to be this group of really divergent reptiles, which later gave rise to turtles because they had no skulls in they had no holes in their skulls apart from their eyes. But later it turned out this was a convergence, and these are just incredible, spectacular animals. So
it's actually still complicated. Like as recently as 2021, there were still like works by some authors where they discussed the potential turtle origin inside Paraeosauria.
Yeah.
And I read the paper. They make some very interesting and good arguments also against these like molecular studies which say turtles are diapsid, because it's actually hard to say that based on molecular data, because obviously you don't have any DNA from definitive anatomy to compare it to. And in the paper they proposed that turtles may still have descended from like the very small parasaurs, like Antodon.
Oh yeah, there's also, I'm looking at a species called Obirkovia, and the species name is Gladiator, which is just incredible. So it's like the
Ridley Scott version.
Yeah, like a guinea pig-sized animal with like a chunky body and a like heavy, thick head, and it was probably a burrower. And I could just see this thing shouting, "Are you not entertained?" Yeah, but going back to what you just said, I mean, molecular studies are groundbreaking. They're not 100% ironclad, I would say, but they're still, I think, like 90% there. And I mean, by that logic that those researchers proposed, you could even say that ankylosaurs are parasaur descendants because they have similar skulls or something. So, I mean...
Yeah, but in that study, they compared the skull of one of the earliest known turtles, Chinlekelis, with the skull of Antodon, and the similarities are pretty striking.
I'm looking at Antodon now. I mean, it could be possible, obviously. I mean, opining from improvised podcast recording, are certainly in no position to make a definitive assessment. But yeah.
The problem is when you look up Chinlekelis, you get a bunch of David Peters stuff, which is bad.
Just a second. I'm looking at Chinlekelis now. Yeah. Antodon really does look like this. You know what this reminds me of? Pill bugs and pill millipedes and those cockroaches that also have shells and can roll up. So it's like the evolution of the same thing. I mean, who knows? Maybe Chinlekelis is actually not a proper turtle, and maybe it's something like one of those shell-bearing placodonts, or maybe Antodon is a late surviving parasaur. So, I mean, like when things evolve a certain way, sometimes the similarities are uncanny. I mean, once again, I would remind our viewers of pill bugs, isopods, and these are land-living crustaceans. But then you have millipedes, which look really similar, but have like a very different evolutionary history. And then you have this bunch of cockroaches, which, technically speaking, they are crustaceans because they are insects and insects are crustaceans, but they are cockroaches which evolved a similar body plan. And like you and I could tell them apart, but if they were fossilized and the remains were incomplete, who knows? I like this thing remaining a mystery.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I personally prefer this idea that turtles descend from parasaurs because it would make them so much more interesting to be like the last descendants of this very ancient and weird group. It's the same with birds being dinosaurs,
Yeah. With turtles, I mean, when you think about something being the descendant of a quote-unquote early group, the expectation kind of is to be more dumb and stupid. I know that's not the case, but like you would expect like a primordial reptile to act more like a frog maybe, or a salamander. But if you look at turtles, if you look at the ways they move, they're actually very canny. They're very smart. Like they can follow you across a room. They know when you're in the room, or like they know how to play, they got these freaky reactions against certain textures. They try to mate with them all the time, but they're really smart. They look at you, they got eyes, and so because of that personal hunch, I felt more comfortable with the diapsid explanation that these were like more quote unquote advanced reptiles that later developed these things. But
like I said, the parasaurs actually were ahead of their neighbors during the Permian, like more so than the actual diapsids that lived during this time.
True. I mean, look, stranger things have happened, so I wouldn't know.
Another animal that is interestingly closely related to parasaurs, Oidibamus. Have you heard of that?
Oh, that's that like flippity flap running lizard guy, right?
Exactly. This was also a para-reptile like the parasaurs, but imagine a little lizard that could actually walk on its hind legs. And I don't just mean when it's running, like a basilisk lizard or one of those frilled neck lizards, but it is thought that this could actually walk and stand on two legs like a little dinosaur.
Well, I would really like there to be a bunch of just like brainless lizard guys just looking at me on a forest floor. I would love to see that.
Yeah, I mean, and they said like, okay, this animal lived in the early Permian alongside, it literally lived alongside a species of Dimetrodon. And
yeah.
That must have been weird to have like Dimetrodon, which was still like kind of halfway in anatomy towards a fish, with like the splayed legs and the dragging tail, and then you already have this thing that looks like a little dinosaur running along.
Yeah. I mean, we were so close to having lizard people, so close.
So many times too.
Imagine a Komodo dragon version of these Eudibamos things. Like there must have been things like that, like in an isolated island, or imagine like the Permian version of the Azores or Madagascar, now forever lost to us. And maybe because of island dispersal, there were actually freaky bolosaurids. That's the clade group that Eudibamos belongs to. Yeah. I'm reading now.
One thing I wanted to plug this when we were discussing reptiliomorphs. If you want spec evo about all of these weird Paleozoic creatures, I have a project called Rülmadol, where it's basically like Skull Island. It's like a lost world type of island in the Indian Ocean, full with these Paleozoic creatures, and they evolved further and are developed into all sorts of crazy forms. And I liked playing around there with this idea of giant reptiliomorphs that go through multiple life stages before they develop into these big dinosaur-like creatures.
That project is one of your best, I must add.
Thank you. And I also have like a mountain goat parasaur in there. And I've only teased it in one picture yet, but I'm working towards a whole lineage of these Oidibamus descendants. That are gonna look like old paleo art of ornithopods, basically.
I really want to draw an island living giant Eudibamos now. Like the Komodo dragon version of these things.
That would look kind of like the Jurassic Park raptors, no?
I mean, just a bunch of them standing on a beach like sentinels. That would be a wonderful scene. If anybody is inspired by this podcast, do draw them out, by the way. And if you have any ideas about what may have evolved in the Permian, also please let us know. Well, my friend, I have to get on going now because, there's been a death in my extended family, and there's a funeral today. But yeah, so I have to get ready for that now. And any last things about the Permian you want to say?
Well, no, actually, I can't think of anything right now.
I'm sure we missed out some amazing groups, but that will have to be when we study the Carboniferous in the upcoming episode. We will gladly tackle them. And as I'm a bit pressed for time now, I want to say goodbye. And any last words, any last things to plug?
No, but okay, I just had an idea of what we maybe missed to talk about. I mean, you had all of these very almost dog-like proto-mammals like Gorgonopsians and Ferocephalians. And it's not hard to imagine that some of them evolved some sort of complex social behavior, maybe even pack hunting.
Let's actually study them too before saying goodbye, because let's do this thoroughly.
Right.
Gorgonopsians, there was a famous meme back in the mid-2000s in the Tetrapod Zoology weblog run by David Peters. I have to go. Just a second.
Don't you mean Darren Naish?
No, wait. Yes, Darren Naish, but let's cut now. So, further about Gorgonopsians and relatives. Yeah, I can't believe how we left them out. We briefly touched upon them, but to summarize, these were like really diverse groups of, imagine things with bodies like Komodo dragons, or not even alligators, literally like Komodo dragons, and with heads like giant baboons or like bone cracking, almost like bear lizard things, and you got a brief approximation. And there were many species of these things. I'm just looking up Gorgonopsians as we speak. There was actually a very famous meme in Darren Naish's Tetrapod Zoology blog back in the mid-2000s, and there was a picture of a baboon skull, and Darren Naish asked people like, can you guess what this is? And somebody came on adamantly saying it's a Gorgonopsid skull, and then it kind of became a meme in that blog's comments to purposefully misidentify every image as a Gorgonopsian skull. So there
I've been reading the blog for a long time, and I somehow missed that meme, I think.
Oh no, it was like all the rage back in the day. But looking back now, it kind of feels like kind of like a more naive and like slightly cringe sort of internet humor. But it was like, if you're in the know, you know. So yeah. But actually it does, like, to a superficial degree, the skulls of some Gorgonopsians do resemble those of predatory mammals, and there are things with almost like saber teeth. Most of the reconstructions either show them as like reptiles with saber teeth, or they look like they have been given a face job from a saber-toothed tiger. But I think reality was somewhere in between. Obviously, these were really specialized, unique, and probably warm-blooded predators. Really weird and cool creatures. And yeah, I mean, we shouldn't have skipped that. Remember, we talked about saber-toothed tigers, or like leopard-like giant cats, or nimravids, with the ability to domesticate and intelligently like be shepherds of men, so to speak, among hominids.
Oh, and you think these like some type of intelligent Gorgonopsid or Ferocephalian could have domesticated those Lystrosaurus?
I mean, yes, that's very likely, because we talked about there being so many Lystrosaurus fossils, so they would be almost like factory farm animals. And then obviously, every cattle needs their shepherd. And then these things get further diverse too. They're also cynodonts, which are even closer to stem mammals, if I'm not mistaken.
I mean, they are the group that out of which directly evolved the mammals.
Yeah. So take that saber-toothed, sprawling, reptile-bodied reptomammal thing, okay, and shrink it so it almost becomes like a sprawl-legged opossum kind of creature, and basically you get cynodonts. And then sometimes these get bigger again, as in the case is with things like Cynognathus, which was, I mean, it has always cast in my mind as a kind of like reptile killer rat dog kind of thing, It was almost like one of those Star Wars prequel background creatures, Cynognathus. Yeah. So, like, long story short, this was like a really diverse clade. And I don't know about you, but I could see some Gorgonopsids becoming maybe able to talk among each other because they could coordinate their hunts, maybe. So out of speech, you would have a symbolic language, and out of that would come some sort of civilization. There's some really nice.
And then they could domesticate Lystrosaurus.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's similar. Like in Serena, there is this storyline about these bird dolphins, basically, which start domesticating a smaller relative of theirs. And of course, because they don't have hands, they don't have like tools or civilization and such, but they are sapient and they have a culture, and they use this to domesticate animals around them.
Yeah, I mean, these cynognathids or Gorgonopsians, they don't have grasping hands either. They have like lizardy looking paws at best. I was always thinking.
On that topic, I drew this creature for Rylmadol, the Gorgoraptor.
Oh, this could be in our background image, by the way.
Yeah, I can send it to you.
Yeah. And I am looking at something with like a head like a cynognatid, or vaguely even like a Gorgonopsid, but the rest of the body is almost like Ornitholestes or a similar crocodile grade archosaur kind of thing. Very, very nice illustration, by the way. I was also always thinking, like, even in a quadrupedal form, though, these creatures, I mean, maybe they would not be able to build tools and make spears or stone axes, but they could always burrow. And do you know those chalk hill drawings in pagan England? So
no.
There are these big hills in England. They are very old, but nobody exactly knows how old. But there are all these like giant geoglyphs on them. There's a very famous like white horse one.
What's their name?
Wait, I'm going to look it up. There's also another one in England. Wait. England, chalk horse. Yeah, it's called the Uffington White Horse. Okay, it's a prehistoric hill figure nearly 100 meters long. And basically, whoever did this dug deep trenches in a hillside, the foundation of which is chalk stone, and created this really primal looking horse figure. And even without hands, I see no reason why creatures with an ability to communicate and coordinate, I see no reason why they could not make such alterations to the landscape. They could just dig images into the hillsides. Like that would be just fantastic. Like you go to a valley in prehistoric Permian, and there's this bizarre chalk image, hundreds of meters long, of like a toothed monster preying upon like some Lystrosaur kind of thing. And turns out it's a mark of that particular clan that lives in this area. There's also another similar drawing, but instead of a white horse, it literally shows a guy with a boner and wielding a stick. I'm just trying to find the name of this thing. Oh, well, wait. Charles Hill Man drawing. Okay. Oh, yeah, this is incredible. It's called the Cern Abbas giant. Cerneabbas giant. And it's literally like the purest expression of masculinity ever. It's this one man with an erection and a big stick.
How do you spell it again?
It is Cerne and Abbas, Abbas.
Cern Abbas giant.
Yeah, and it's literally like, if you come here, I'll either hit you with my stick or worse. You know, that's like.
Oh, yeah. And wait. What is this news? Apparently, some like I don't know activists or like some tourists gave him a speedo.
Yeah, and it's also apparently a common practice in the region to sleep on or inside the giant's penis for good luck or for fertility or to have kids and stuff like that. I mean, I think it would be a class A Airbnb experience, you know, just 400 pounds a night to sleep on the dick in the open field. But yeah, there's also another.
They can spend less money to sleep on my dick.
Okay. The call is out. I don't know, but yeah, you heard me. If you can't donate to us on Patreon, maybe you'd like to take up TK's offer that way. Oh God.
Oh God.
It's
not our fault. It's not our fault that this topic derailed. It's the ancient English that made this.
There's also another figure called the Long Man of Wilmington, and it's a more mysterious figure. It looks like something out of Ancient Aliens. It's a tall man holding two sticks or like two rods in two hands. It almost looks like a tarot card. And because of the topography or just the weird angle of the drawing, its head is also bigger and longer, like a gray alien. You should look this up. The Long Man of Wilmington.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, it does look a bit eerie just because it is so featureless.
Yeah, so I don't know if this has a kind of sleep on it to get kids action going on. But these figures are really mysterious. No one knows exactly how old they are or who made them. But suffice it to say, I can really see intelligent creatures leaving their mark on the landscape like this without.
Yeah, but would this be preserved for millions of years is the question.
That's the thing. It wouldn't be. But, if you just popped into a time machine, maybe you would see, I don't know, threatening gorgonopsid figures everywhere. On the hills and in the valleys, there are the farms with the Lystrosaurs. So actually the farms get to fossilize because they're in the valley and they trap the sediment and everything, and the hillsides just erode away. What do we know, man? What do we know?
Yeah, it's interesting. There was also this other group during the Permian, I mentioned them a bit, the Ferrocephalians.
Yeah.
They're like size-wise, they were somewhere in the middle between the Gorgonopsids and the Cynodonts, and some of these were just so butt-fucking ugly.
Are we talking about okay, they look like Gorgonopsians, but stockier. Some of them have really long head. I don't know, they look badger-like almost.
Yeah, badger-like. There's also, they are just very weird. Also, they have double saber teeth, at least some of them.
Yeah.
This one Ferrocephalian from the Triassic that is suspected to have had, Euchambersia. That one is suspected to have actually had venomous teeth like a snake.
Oh. How do you spell this character now?
Euchambersia. Euchambersia.
Wait. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not really keen on that though. I mean, I think it's just like specialized teeth to maybe catch a special sort of prey. I think you can't really deduce venom in those things, but
I mean,
maybe.
I guess it is kind of like that case in that one dromaeosaur where they also suspected that it could have been venomous. But I think this is a different case because this thing actually had like channels inside the tooth, like you would see in a cobra tooth.
Okay, actually, the skull is really strange. So I'm trying to describe it. The teeth itself isn't very long, but there's like a bony root that holds the tooth, which is like very strange and tube-like. And yeah, so below this tube, there's like a big space, maybe for a gland or I don't know. I mean, what would they envenomate? That would be strange though. Because like venomous. So here's the thing, like snakes are venomous because they have no arms or legs. So they need something to subdue their prey really rapidly. Now this thing had arms and legs. And
I mean, no, wait, like Komodo dragons and other monitor lizards, they also have venom.
Yeah, true. But this is an extreme specialization. I wonder if it's not a venom gland there, but maybe a space for like some sort of muscles. And I don't know, maybe it was evolved to like know its way through the body of a dead animal or something like that. But then again, also there's lots of precedent for venomous mammals too. I think they discovered that shrews have some sort of venom which helps them tackle big prey.
Shrews, and I think also like a tenrec.
Yeah. So, and also, I mean, we always make comparisons with things that exist now, but it's entirely plausible for there to have been things in the past which have no parallels. They could have set their own precedents. So yeah, I mean, it's plausible, maybe some sort of like poison reptile badger, but yeah, it's strange.
Apparently, slow lorises also have venom.
Yeah, but it's secreted from a weird bone spike they have on their necks. Strangely enough.
Weird, yeah.
So they do this like I'm an introvert, don't touch me thing, and they duck with their head held between their hands, and it's just like I don't know, like abused child in a traumatic house, just rocking back and forth, and they do that, and if anything bites them on the nape, it gets a hit from the poison spike. Really weird animal.
But isn't that cool that there's a primate with venom?
Yeah, true.
Like that I never suspected that. Like that's something new. I learned today.
Oh, well, I mean, I learned a lot of new things. I did not know about Euchambersia, or I always thought pterocephalians were part of the Gorgonopsid group, but apparently not. So
no, they are like closer to the cynodonts, I believe.
So like going back, remember if you go to the Paleogene or Miocene episode we covered, there were like successive radiations of meat-eating mammals that were not carnivorans. So like that, in the Permian, there were these like really successful different lineages of predators, herbivores. I believe there must have been some aquatic forms or burrowing forms too. Like it was a really diverse world, as alien from the world of the dinosaurs as the world of dinosaurs was alien to the world that came after it. And
it's weird that we have never found like synapsids from this period with aquatic or better marine adaptations.
I mean, maybe they existed, but...
Yeah, maybe, but it's weird that we haven't found them yet, and that they apparently didn't exist, because at this time you already had a few groups of reptiles exploring the seas, like the mesosaurs and claudiosaurs.
I wonder if being quote-unquote cold-blooded gave them an advantage. I mean, maybe, but then again, dolphins didn't evolve that way, but then maybe in that day and age, it was energetically more efficient to have a less dynamic metabolism. But I don't know, maybe it was related with the temperature of the seas, or maybe it's just a founder effect. I have no idea. And also, do we have like fossil shadows across the Permian, like the mid-Jurassic?
Fossil shadows? What do you mean?
I mean, like shadow zones where we have no fossils from entire epochs.
I mean, I believe there was, like I told you before the break, there was this fossil gap of where coal is completely missing in the at the end of the Permian, and there's some debate about is this like just a product of erosion, or were there genuinely no forests during this apocalypse?
I mean, also, it's important to remember, I think the world was one big, huge continent, Pangaea, back then. And it is theorized that the interior of this continent was like barren of life. I mean, it was like a mega Australia, if you think. I think, like, by the way, that's a sideline within a sideline. But imagine those deserts of Pangaea. And, in Australian deserts, there doesn't seem to be much life, but there are actually very weird small geckos and reptiles that live there. And imagine all the like ephemeral species that lived in Pangaean deserts across the dunes that never got to fossilize. Just fantastic. Speaking of Permian ages and aquatic life, okay, here I got one more intelligent species we can dream up about.
Okay.
Remember how we considered Paleoparadoxia and the Desmostillions, those weird splay-legged, like hippo seal kind of things, which left no descendants. I could really see something like that evolving from Lystrosaur stock, like a Lystrosauroid Paleoparadoxia. And maybe they could be the like intelligent dolphin people that we never know existed.
There was some like spec evo project. I don't remember the name or the author, but there was like one really cool illustration of these semi-marine lystrosaurs basking on a beach looking like walruses.
Oh, I do not know about that one, but it must have been wonderful. I'm glad somebody beat us to the punch there.
It was a short project. I think that was literally the only image in there. But it was a cool idea. And the image was really well made.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to go. I mean, I always say this in my channel when giving art advice to people that, not every great idea needs to be like a Serena or a great big project. You can just make standalone illustrations and they work perfectly well. So there. All right. I mean, the Permian is just incredible. I could go on talking on for more and more, but I think we've reached the end of at least potential species to consider. I don't know.
So do you want to talk about what happened while we had a break today?
Yeah. So listen, today we're recording on the 21st of July, 2024. And actually during the break, I had to go to a sort of funeral/wake event for a very dear relative who passed away. So actually that all actually happened. So, for you it was like for you listeners it was like a blink of an eye, but yeah, I just attended a big and kind of emotionally charged social function. But also we learned, what did we learn, TK? Take it.
Joe Biden just announced that he will not run for president this year.
Yes, it's Joe over.
And I think that's like unprecedented.
Yeah, I mean
that like the nominee of the party just abdicate before the election really starts.
The only parallel I can find was the abdication of the British king before World War II. And
Biden is just as old.
Yeah. Well, with the British king, actually, there was like, let us say, a lot more hairy stuff happening under the table. But this is almost as close. And look, I'll never master the secret with which such decisions are made. But yeah, we are living through, look, we go through all these days talking about parallel evolution in geological time, or like hardcore spec evo, or like, giant dick man on pagan hillsides and stuff like that. But, in the background, like monumental and quite disturbing changes are taking place. And, in this channel, like, I have really sharp political opinions, but I always say, just stay safe out there. And I mean, this thing always happens in the background, but I think we're approaching this point in history where the background for a lot of us in many countries is suddenly going to leap into the foreground and like directly touch our lives. And I'll leave it at there. May the best candidate win. It's a new day in America. What do you think?
I just don't want to live through a time where a historical event happens every week.
Yeah. I mean, you had the assassination attempt and
you had the assassination attempt, and then the news that Biden got COVID. Literally, like if some time traveler I don't know, move the chair by 1 centimeter, we could now be living in a timeline where both Trump and Biden are dead, and nobody would know what to do. Isn't that just fucking crazy?
It's insane. And also don't forget the global computer blackout that happened in between.
Yeah, what the fuck was that?
Nobody knows.
That was also unprecedented. Like it's been 2 weeks with unprecedented events, but it's scary.
Yeah, look, my version of things, and I'm actually thinking about making a video about this, that, some great events are likely to happen and why they might be happening and what a regular person like us might do about it. Look, all I'll say is make sure there's a roof over your head. Make sure you got some sort of income stream. It doesn't need to be a glamorous job. You could work at a library or and also live within your means, at least for the next 5-6 years. And also form good connections with family and community and then hope for the best. And because these things, they have a way of months later translating into real changes in the quality of life for many people. And remember, I've been really careful not to pick a political side in this, but these events, it wasn't like this, okay? When I was growing up, it wasn't like this. The news were boring, actually. And then ever since COVID, actually, we've been on an acceleration slope. Almost feels like another, I won't make the obvious parallel, another Permian extinction is coming. But it seems that the order of the world, which has been set up since the 1970s, or maybe even the 1940s, is beginning to buck and grumble. And with each development like this, I see less and less chance of another great conflict on the horizon. I won't elaborate on the sides or who will attack who, but for example, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent, but
it's not that unrelated to the topic when you really think about it, because we've been talking the entire time about the downfall of civilization, just for different species than us. And we are in a dire situation right now, not because of Donald Trump or whatever, but because our entire economic system that we live in is destroying the planet we live on.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
It's painted itself into a corner.
Yeah, having money soon won't really matter when you can't even breathe the air.
Yeah. The way I look at things, for example, in the States, we're talking about these extreme powers granted to the president. And many other countries have been having similar reforms, actually massively strengthening the executive branch and making them less accountable. In my opinion, this is not because some people are tyrannical or they're wanting a power grab or whatever. It's actually the country's way of becoming, in slimy corporate terms, they call this agile. Soon there will come a time when countries will need to do really disgusting and unpopular things just to survive. And I think all these legal changes in many countries, by the way, it's not limited to America or the presidential powers. There will come a time when entire populations will need to be moved by force if necessary. There will come a time when drastic changes will be needed to be imposed top down on everybody. In a way unseen since the Second World War. And all of these legal changes are actually gearing up for that. Add to this, you can look this up right now. Many countries in the world are actively discussing active military service, national service again. In Europe, many of these were canceled. Now they're bringing them back up. And yeah, it's going to be interesting. I kid you not, I hope this doesn't come true, but one day it will be like you and I are talking about, I don't know, fucking jellyfish evolution and shit. And then you or I will say, oh my God, there was a dirty bomb in this city or something, And then it's just, look, just 2 days ago, we skipped. There was this entire half of the city was destroyed in Yemen, ostensibly for retribution for one drone attack.
Yeah, that was the strike by Israel.
Yes. Look, this is biblical stuff. If you see those pictures, it's I don't have a magic mirror ball, and these are only my opinions. But, I'm just painting a picture with a very broad brush here, and that picture isn't great. So I don't know. Ending on a somber note there.
Yeah, I mean, there is this one moment from Lord of the Rings that this reminds me of, where Frodo is sad that so many bad things and like world-changing things are happening during his time. And what did Gandalf answer? Yeah. So everyone feels, but we have to make the best out of the situation we are given.
Yeah.
I think he says something like that. I'd have to look up the quote again, and it is pretty hopeful.
I also remember this one scene in The Lord of the Rings where I don't know what their names are, Merry or Pippin or something. They're in the
Merry
Battle of Minas Tirith and they're scared, but Gandalf comes and gives them a pep talk and stuff and saying like it's normal to be afraid, but you have to like spur yourself into action or something like that. That always stays with me.
Yes, and also the moment where he basically talks about what it's like to enter heaven because he already died.
Oh God, that's dark. Well, man, this was one of the nicest episodes we recorded, by the way, including the dismal future prediction prophecy part.
Those are always the best.
Yeah, and like as always, stay safe, everybody. And if you value our contribution in this uncertain day and age, we can always use your contributions. So please consider donating to TK's Patreon first and then my Patreon second. You get to see a lot of stuff that you won't get to see anywhere else, and you will be making these podcasts possible. So that's that from me. Man, what a fucking day. I hope you had a nice one too, man.
Yeah, you too. Everyone, please tell us in the comments how you like this episode and what you imagine for the Permian.
Yep.
And maybe what species, what animal groups you want us to talk about in the next episode, where we will probably be covering the Carboniferous and with luck maybe also the rest of the Paleozoic. But given how these things go, we probably need to have like a separate episode for every third of the Cambrian alone.
I don't know, but this really is like Achilles and the turtle race. Like we went, like the deeper we go, the slower we get, because the weirder and juicier the creatures get.
Yeah, you won't believe what I have prepared for the Precambrian episode.
Oh, okay, I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully the world will still be around by then. So yeah.
Even if not, I will still be here.
Okay. Well, lots of love, everybody. And wherever you are, thanks for listening. This has been the CMTK podcast.
Bye-bye.
Bye.